Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of the Triple Play. This is Danielle. This week I'm joined by Alex, Skidmore, and Rico Mckinney, and we have a really exciting show this week. A lot has happened this weekend in the sports world, especially in the NFL. Things have been pretty crazy. Vols had a bye week, so it was a little sad not being able to watch some UT football this weekend, but college football treated us well, especially in the SEC. It was a very exciting weekend, so we're going to go ahead and get into it. Like I said, this weekend was a bye week for the Vols, but it's a really good time for us to prepare for the Kentucky game this weekend, which is always exciting, but this season could be a little bit more exciting than usual. I think there's a lot of hype going into this weekend. Lil Jon was on campus yesterday, toured the facilities and everything. Maybe that'll be a little bit of a momentum shift for the Vols. But right now, where the Vols stand, they're doing... It's been a season for the Vols. We'll just put it that way. It's been a season. It's been kind of up and down, I'd say. But, I mean, right now we're 4-5, 1-4 in the SEC. Kind of expected going into this. I know a lot of people were hoping that Butch Jones could have a 7-5 season. We could still possibly get it, but that's still just remaining optimistic. But looking at this weekend against Kentucky, Kentucky's 5-5, 2-5 in the SEC. They're on a 4-game losing streak right now. They've lost to LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Georgia. Their last win came against Louisiana Monroe. That was back on October 11th, I believe it was. So it's been a while for them. I know they're looking for a win to come up at some point. A lot of Kentucky fans are saying it could be this weekend. My dad's a Kentucky fan. We have not talked about this game at all, which is interesting. I'm sure this week will be very interesting for our family seeing what happens. But looking at the Kentucky roster, I think you guys would agree with me. Patrick Towles is the game changer right now. Absolutely. He has been ridiculous just this season passing-wise. He's passed for 2,374 yards, 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He has a completion percentage of 58.6%. And he's also known for rushing the ball. He has some speed on him. 266 yards for 5 touchdowns. Not too bad for a Kentucky quarterback, I guess you could say.
Not too bad at all. He reminds me a little bit of Dylan Thompson, how he can sometimes scramble away and get yards, though he's a little bit deceptively quick, but he's not going to burn you out trying to run the ball. You definitely have to watch out for Towles and play well in your assignments in the secondary. And when they decide to run the ball, they've got JoJo Kemp. Mm-hmm. You absolutely have to watch out for him. They just snapped him the ball, and he beat South Carolina for them.
Absolutely. I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm excited about the Vols going forward. Of course, we come out a great win 2 weeks ago, but when you look at it, Kentucky just lost 63. Georgia put up 63 points against Kentucky. If you think about it, last time we played Kentucky, last time we played Georgia, we moved the ball pretty well. So that gives me hopes going into next week, based with Doss. And speaking of Doss, man, he's a guy on campus right now. Who doesn't want to be Doss right now? Doss, 166 yards rushing. Mm-hmm. That's a performance I love to see. I'm excited about him. I think the Vols are going to win out, me personally. But when you look at our schedule, this is all games that we could potentially win and also games that we could potentially lose. So, I'm excited going forward. And I think the Vols are going to win out this week and also win out them going forward. But, yeah, I'm excited about Doss and what's coming with the Vols.
Absolutely. And going back to the Georgia-Kentucky game this weekend, I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be TCU deja vu all over again from a couple weeks ago whenever TCU put up 82 points, I think it was. I think the final score of that game was 82-27. Absolutely ridiculous. Going into the third quarter, I was like, it's going to happen. This is going to be really bad for Kentucky. But it was a home game for Kentucky. A lot of magic had been happening in Commonwealth this season. But after that loss this weekend, I think that brings their total losses at home to 2, both against SEC teams. Not much of a surprise there, but if you look at the beginning of the season for Kentucky, they played some really lackluster teams. I think that whenever they went 5-1, the only real competition they had, Florida and South Carolina. They beat South Carolina 45-38, but they lost to Florida in overtime. 3 overtimes, mind you, 36-30. So, beginning of the season, they did look really promising. I was pretty scared of them at one point, but now it's just they've let go of that accelerator, and it's just gone kind of downhill. But this weekend, like I said, it was a struggle for them. Mark Stoops even called it embarrassing, not only for the team, but for the fans and for the coaching staff, and especially him specifically. But if you look at the passing yards for Kentucky, they only had 139 passing yards, 214 yards rushing. Not much of a surprise. At the beginning of the season, they were really known for their rush game. There was a lot of speed on this team that most people weren't used to with Kentucky football. It's been a while since we've seen that. But looking at Georgia, just incredible game for them. 254 yards passing, 305 yards rushing. That's ridiculous. Nick Chubb, since we're talking about rushing, he had 13 carries for 170 yards and 1 touchdown. Not too bad there for him. But Kentucky did make a bit of a comeback in the second quarter, scoring 24 points, but obviously not enough. Looking at Georgia, after the second quarter, they went and scored 28 of their own points. So that was in the third and fourth quarter combined. So it was just really tough for Kentucky. Hunter Mason also had a really good game for Georgia. 13 for 16, 174 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions there. But yeah, definitely this weekend, I feel like this game between Georgia and Kentucky, it's really tough to judge what it's going to be like for the Vols this weekend. Kentucky's just they've been up and down as well. They started on a really good swing, but since then, like I said, the accelerator's gone. It's just gone downhill for them. Still not sure what to think. It's going to be tough. And I mean, looking at Kentucky's schedule after us, they play Louisville. Always a good game to end out the season with for them. I love watching Louisville Kentucky games in any sport. It's a great rivalry that I love to keep up with. Mainly due to my dad being a Kentucky fan. I like to root for Louisville at any time I can whenever they play against each other. But it should be really interesting. But looking at the Vols, right now, like I said, we're 4-5, 1-4 in the SEC. Bowl talk is upon us. Last I knew, I think the Belk Bowl was the top choice for the Vols. Not much of a surprise there. It's like a low bowl, I guess you could say. It's expected. But we have to win at least 2 games out of these final 3 to be bowl eligible. Vanderbilt's almost a given. But the back-to-back wins that Vandy had was the first, I think that was the first time since 1926. So, I mean, Vanderbilt could still have that little chip on their shoulder, but James Franklin's gone, which is another thing to remember. But Vandy has struggled. So I think definitely that's a given for us this with the final games and this season. They're the given win, I would say. But whenever it comes to Mizzou and Kentucky, Mizzou is so tough to judge. They have been up and down like crazy. They're 7-2, 4-1 in the SEC. They've had really demanding wins in the SEC. Their only loss in the SEC came against Georgia back on October 11th. They got shut out. It's just, it all goes back to Matty Mock with Mizzou. However, how Matty Mock performs is how the team performs.
And they lost at home to Indiana.
That is true.
Who only has 3 wins on the season.
Mm-hmm.
It's just strange to think, okay, you're almost about to win the SEC East, but you couldn't beat Indiana at home. So
Absolutely.
Then you think, okay, we've got a chance, but then you think, well, then again, we've never beaten Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So something's got to give.
Right, but when you look at Missouri also, if you guys remember last year, that was Dobbs' debut. And, he was a terrible game. He threw, I think, 2 interceptions. So I think this is kind of more so a redemption game for Dobbs, and not only Dobbs, but Tennessee. So this is a game to show, look, I'm here, I'm back, I learned from my mistakes. And last season, he ended up with 6 interceptions. So I think this year, it's a way for him to show that basically I'm ready. I'm ready to take on this leading job. I'm poised now. I understand the team. I understand what's our mission going forward. So I think Missouri is going to be a good game for us, and I think we're finally going to get that win and we're going to pull it off.
Absolutely, but then again, like we've mentioned this weekend, it's going to be a tough one, I think, judging. I think if we win this one, that'll really judge the rest of the season, the final 2. But Kentucky you can't really expect certain things. I mean, they could either be super great or very lackluster. I feel like that's just how it is with them as of late. They could have top performers but still just not play hard enough. But then again, that's how Kentucky's been the past so many seasons. I mean, countless seasons. So it'll be a really interesting game this weekend. 4:00 game. I don't know if we know what channel it's going to be on yet. Probably SEC Network, I would say. I may be wrong on that. But it should just, like I said, it should be a really exciting game. Looking at other games, before we go on to the rest of the SEC, there's still no word yet for the Mizzou game, what time that'll be, what channel that'll be on, but the SEC Nation is supposed to be here to cover that for pregame, so that should be really exciting having everybody there. I know I've heard a lot of talk on campus about Tebow being back here. That'll be really exciting.
Yes.
I personally am really excited to see him. I would just like to be in his presence. I think
Right.
that'd be cool, but just to verify, the Kentucky game this weekend, 4 o'clock, SEC Network. So if you can't be at the game, make sure you can be there. I think there's 1,000 tickets still available. Coach Jones is really trying to get people to come out for this. It's going to be a really big game. I mean, Kentucky, Tennessee, that's like, there's a rivalry there. There always, I mean, for me, there has been, like, since I was little, but it's a really exciting game year in and year out. So should be really good this weekend, but on to the rest of the SEC. The talk of the weekend, Bama and LSU. Overtime win for Alabama, 20-13. Absolutely ridiculous game. There was a lot being held back, I would say. It was really a reserved game for the most part. Not too many, like, high points, not too many low points. It was kind of just back and forth. But the last 50 seconds of regulation, Alabama drove 55 yards to tie the game with a field goal. That was insane.
Mustang package.
Absolutely.
Mustang package. John Chavis was known for it and was infamous for it here and continued it on to LSU. And you'd think by now he would have drawn up a new prevent, but there it is again, one more time. Somebody drives down the field and pulls out the game.
Absolutely.
You almost can expect that when LSU and Bama. That's always great games. I was so hyped the whole week for this game. It was like, okay, LSU and Bama, that's going to be a great game. Because when these guys play, it's going to be a rough and a rugged game, a grit and grind game. That's going to be. But when I think about Alabama, I don't think about so much what they do well. I think about what they don't do. And the one thing they don't do is turn the ball over. And when you don't turn the ball over, you give your defense the opportunity to make a play of late. And that's exactly what they did yesterday with the fumble on the 1 yard line, if I'm not mistaken. And so Blake Sims, 55 yards, that was surprising. Not surprising as much, but it was not one of his best performance games, but he just came up in the clutch, made the stupendous plays, and I think they just pulled the game off. And that's just basically a good game by Alabama going forward.
You usually think about LSU winning these close games with some kind of miracle that happens at the end, but then think about it, it's almost strange this year that they lost to Mississippi State on a dropped Hail Mary, and then they got killed by Auburn. So it looks like some of that magic has kind of gone away because they had a fumble inside the 10-yard line. They recovered, and they still didn't score a touchdown, had to kick a field goal, kicked the kickoff out of bounds, and then gave up a huge drive to tie it up right at the end of the game.
Nick Server.
Yeah, and going into overtime, Blake Sims threw to win the game in overtime, threw a short pass to DeAndrew White. That basically just put it in the bag. After that touchdown, I thought there's no way LSU can try to come back and score as well to send it into another overtime. Just didn't see that happening. But Blake Sims had a really good game, 20 for 45, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. Not too bad there. TJ Yeldon, 15 carries, 68 yards. But the one thing that everybody was talking about with Yeldon was the fumble with a minute 15 left in the game. I was not expecting to see that fumble from Yeldon.
He had an ankle injury, and they rolled up on his ankle and pulled him back, and you could tell as he extended that he was just in pain. He lost focus and just kind of tossed the ball in front of him.
Definitely.
LSU jumped on it. So no word yet on how serious the ankle injury is, so he might be out for a little while longer.
Definitely. And looking at the stats, one thing that stood out, I don't really know why it stood out to me, but it's just a really odd number. Looking at the third down conversions for this game, Alabama, 8 for 20. LSU, 9 for 22. Absolutely insane. Not expecting to see that. Fourth down conversions, Alabama got theirs that they needed. LSU went 500 on theirs, 1 and 2. Both teams had 1 turnover apiece. just a really bizarre game. I mean, I was not thinking we'd have an overtime game with this. I mean, it's going to be a rugged game either way, but I really thought there would be a definitive leader on this one. I was leaning more towards Alabama being that definitive leader, but overall, really exciting game. Another exciting game in the SEC was Texas A&M upsetting Auburn, which was insane. Kyle Allen, true freshman coming into this game, 19 for 29, 277 yards, 4 touchdowns, which were all in the first half, and 1 interception. Not too bad for a freshman.
Not at all. Looked like he finally recovered. He had a couple freshman mistakes last week versus ULM, even though they got the win. But this week he came out, became a road warrior in his first road start, too, in Alabama. There's something about Texas A&M going to the state of Alabama when they're ranked in the top 3 and they pull it out.
Definitely. That's a really good point there. And looking at Auburn's rushing,
Wow.
363 yards alone rushing. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say a surprise, but then again, not really. Auburn, fast team. There's so much speed on that team. It's ridiculous.
They're very fast.
You could say this definitely ended Auburn's playoff hopes.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely ended. And when you look at Texas A&M, they have been producing great quarterbacks of late. You go as far as Manziel, Hill, and now. I mean, it just surprises to me. I don't know what the coach is doing there, but I think he has a great recruiting aspect for a quarterback. So, but Auburn, I think I don't know what's wrong with them right now, but I think of course A&M, that's a great win for them because this has been a disappointing season.
Yeah, definitely. And even before that, Ryan Tannehill was a pretty good quarterback when Richard Sherman was not Richard Sherman, Mike Sherman.
Mike Sherman
is still the coach at A&M.
Definitely. And it's also important to note for Auburn, Nick Marshall still had a really good game. 15 for 21, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. That's just passing. If we look at the rushing for Nick Marshall, 18 carries, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns there. Pretty low yardage. I mean, his longest run was for 30 yards. Not too bad there. I mean, we've seen some pretty long runs with Nick Marshall. But still, overall, pretty good game for him. Kudos to
the 2 fumbles.
The 2 fumbles, absolutely. But kudos to Texas A&M for once again stunning the state of Alabama in some sort of way. But on to the next game, Florida just blew past Vandy, 34-10. Traylon Harris, 13 for 21, 215 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions passing. But whenever it came to rushing, he did fantastic. 10 carries for 49 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. Pretty great. I mean, we're used to seeing speed from him too. It's kind of like a Nick Marshall, but I'd say he's more reserved than Nick Marshall. That's just my opinion. But also, in terms of rushing, Kelvin Taylor and Jeff Driscoll also ran in a touchdown apiece there. And Johnny McCray for Vandy he was 14 for 35, 160 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Vandy's total rush number was only 83 yards. That is extremely low even for Vandy.
Yeah, that is. I will say Ralph Webb is a pretty good running back for them, but they really don't have many other players. So once you feed him, however many times a game you have to feed him, then you can stack the box pretty well. Right now they don't have a quarterback that's going to beat you down the field, and until they do, their offense is going to be in a bit of a funk.
Definitely, that's really true there. But other notable games in the SEC, those were all the main ones, but also Mississippi State had a pretty solid win yesterday against UT Martin, 45-16. I did not expect UT Martin to put up 16 points. I thought it would be a shutout, to be quite honest. But really good for Mississippi State. And then Ole Miss also had a pretty solid win against Presbyterian. They shut them out, 48-0. Really good game for Ole Miss. In the second quarter alone, they put up 21 points. That's not much of a surprise with Ole Miss. They're doing really well. But looking at Bo Wallace for this game, 11 for 15, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's still putting up pretty good numbers for Ole Miss. I mean, he's he started off super strong, and then there were just like those little mistakes that he'd make between games. But I mean, I still think that Ole Miss is still a fairly good team. I mean, they're still number 11 in the rankings, but they have a lot to be proud of.
Definitely. I think a game like this was definitely what Bo Wallace needed to kind of ease back into it, especially after losing Laquan Treadwell last week. So now he's got to find out who his go-to receiver is, and a scrub team like Presbyterian's a good way to figure out who your playmakers are.
Absolutely. And looking at some games in the rest of college football, the game of the weekend was Ohio State against Michigan State. Ohio State upset Michigan State in East Lansing 49-37. There were really high passing yards for this game. JT Barrett for OSU, 16 for 26, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But he also had a really good day rushing, 14 carries, 86 yards for 2 touchdowns. And then Connor Cook for Michigan State, 25 of 45, 358 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I knew this was going to be a fairly high-scoring game, but to see so much emphasis on the passing from both teams kind of caught me off guard. I haven't really kept up with Ohio State as much as I usually do this season, but I was really impressed by the passing games from both teams.
Absolutely. OSU is no doubt Big Ten's contender. I mean, wow. Barrett, sensational performance. I didn't even know who he was until I knew he was, but I didn't see him as this caliber quarterback. He's very formidable. I mean, now OSU, so I think you definitely can see some things going forward with them.
Absolutely. And looking at another upset, Texas upset West Virginia 33-16. It's kind of tough for me to call it a true upset. I believe West Virginia is like 23rd in the nation. And they've just, I mean, they lost to TCU, I think it was a week ago, by 1 point. Not much of a surprise there for me. I mean, I'm a big fan of TCU, so I like seeing them beat West Virginia. But it was just, I mean, West Virginia made a really late surge, scoring 13 points in the fourth quarter. But you also have to remember Texas scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. So either way, it's not going to help out West Virginia at all. But Clint Trickett had a really good game, 36 for 49, 248 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception, but 248 yards against Texas. Not too bad there. But the guy that everybody's talking about from this game is Jonathan Gray. 10 carries, 100 yards. And if you do the math, it's 10.1 yards per carry for an average with 3 touchdowns. And his longest being 40 yards. That's just marvelous for him.
Absolutely. Great rushing performance. You always like to get a 10-yard per carry average, then you know you're doing something right. Get multiple touchdowns and pretty much putting everything away.
Definitely. And looking at some other games from college football this weekend, Florida State beat Virginia 34-20. Somehow Florida State keeps making these rallies. I don't see how it's happening. It's just, it just keeps happening. But I'm pretty sure that was Florida State's 25th straight win. So that's a lot. They're 9-0 overall, 6-0 in the ACC. I still say Duke is their main competition in the ACC, but we'll see where that leads by the end of the season. Oregon beat Utah 51-27. TCU beat Kansas State 41-20. Pretty close game there. I was expecting a little bit closer since it was a 6-7 matchup, but still really good for TCU. Arizona State beat Notre Dame 55-31. That was just insane. I mean, Notre Dame, they've kind of been back and forth too. I mean, they're 7-2 on the season. But, man, 55-31, that's a lot. Looking at some other games, Baylor beat Oklahoma 48-14. Good win there for Baylor. UCLA topped Washington 44-30. Arizona beat Colorado 38-20. That was a really close game too. Colorado's 2-8 this season. For them to only lose by 18 to Arizona, a team that's 7-2, 4-2 in the Pac-12, really impressive there for Colorado.
Colorado took UCLA to 2 overtimes.
That is true.
A week or 2 ago.
That is very true, and that was a really good game to watch.
That close.
They're always just that close. I feel like that's how it always is with Colorado. Yeah. They're always just a hit or miss.
They're always this close to 1990. Not quite.
That's very true. looking at a few more games, like I mentioned, Duke, probably the only competition Florida State has right now in the ACC. They beat Syracuse 27-10. That makes Duke 8-1 overall this season, 4-1 in the ACC. Really excited to see what Cutcliffe continues to do with Duke. It's tough seeing him at a different school. I miss him here at Tennessee. I know it's been a while, but I love what he's doing with Duke. He's really bringing that program back to life because Duke's just always been a basketball school for the longest time, but it's nice to see them finally doing something with football. One last game to mention, Georgia Tech demolished NC State, 56-23. Georgia Tech's now 8-2 overall, 5-2 in the ACC. They could also be competition for Florida State, but I still just have Duke edging them out in terms of competition.
Yeah, Duke beat them head to head by about a score or two, and now it's coming down to Georgia Tech has one ACC game left against Clemson, and if they win that, then they'd have to have Duke lose to Virginia Tech and North Carolina.
Definitely.
And then Georgia Tech would jump them. So Georgia Tech's been playing pretty well. They've got a quarterback who is committed to be a defensive back at Alabama. Came to run the triple option offense, and Justin Thomas is doing very, very well.
Definitely. And going on to NFL, once again, Peyton is being Peyton as always. Peyton threw for 5 touchdowns yesterday in the win against Oakland. He was 31 for 44, 340 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But with this, Peyton passed Drew Brees for the most games with at least 5 touchdowns thrown in NFL history. He has 9, Drew Brees has 8, and Dan Marino has 6. It's always funny just seeing Dan Marino in the same sentence with Peyton. I mean, 2 of my personal favorite quarterbacks. It's just funny how they always just end up together with record-breaking things. But if you've lost count with how many touchdowns Peyton's at right now, he's at 520. I'm still keeping count for anybody who needs it. Since the record-breaking night that he had on October 19th, was it? Yeah, October 19th. Since that third touchdown of the night to Demaryius Thomas, where he broke the record with 509, he has thrown 11 touchdowns since. He did have one more in that game on October 19th that he also threw to Demaryius Thomas. But, I mean, is Peyton ever going to stop? That's the real question.
For me, of course, Peyton Manning put up a great performance. And we always should expect that. But I'm kind of getting disappointed because, of course, it's like all this hype in the regular season. We all can agree Peyton Manning is one of the best regular season quarterback arguably ever. But my question is, what is Peyton Manning going to do in the postseason when it counts, when it matters? Are we going to see these catastrophic numbers in the postseason season going up against caliber teams, or are we going to see him crunch and be disappointed again? So that's my question when I look at Peyton Manning. I almost expect him to put up 5,000 yards, over 40-plus touchdowns, with a low rating of interceptions. I wouldn't suspect that, but his playoff record is not up to par, in my opinion.
No, I'd agree with you there. Definitely, I mean, Peyton's always gotten so much backlash, I guess you could say, for always just kind of quote-unquote choking in the postseason, or in the playoffs, I should say. But I would like to say that this could be a turnaround for him. I mean, I don't see him stopping anytime soon.
Right.
He's so strong right now. Like, he can't stop. Like, can't stop, won't stop. Okay, Peyton, we got you. But, I mean, he's just been lights out this season. This is his season for sure. I would love to see him do well in the playoffs. I'd like to see the Broncos in general do well in the playoffs. It was good seeing them win as well as they did this week. Last week was really tough against the Patriots. Still kind of hurts to think about that. But overall, really good performance for Peyton. This could be another little bit of a swing back in the right direction for the Broncos. At least we can all hope so. Looking at other NFL games, Titans took an early lead against Baltimore, 7-0 after the first quarter. But Baltimore just said, no, sorry. 21 unanswered points throughout the whole game for them. Titans lost to Baltimore 21-7. Zach Mettenberger had a really good game, surprisingly. I did not expect this from him, to be quite honest, especially against a defense and a team in general like the Ravens. Mettenberger was 16 for 27, 179 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Against a defense like the Ravens, that's not too bad of a game.
It really isn't. And the Titans completely outplayed them in the first half, but were only able to put up 7 points. They had a fumble on the first drive as he was maybe across the goal line.
Mhm.
The cameras couldn't tell.
Right.
But that's just where the Titans are right now.
That
They
is
can
true.
play really well. They just
Mhm.
can't put up the points to get the game.
Classic Titans.
Definitely. It's been tough for them. I mean, they are 2-7 this season. It's just those are low numbers for the Titans. I'm not gonna lie. 2-7. That's rough. I'm not a Titans fan by any means, but I mean, I even feel for them. That's rough. I know you're a Titans fan,
Yeah.
Alex, but I feel for you. I feel for
The
you.
most Titans play ever happened. They threw it to their star tight end on a
Mhm.
third down. He gets hit helmet to helmet and drops the ball. We get it back and fall on it. And then one of our players shoves him, so we get a personal foul. And they review it and determine it wasn't a catch, but also don't call a targeting foul on the helmet to helmet. So then we have a fourth down and have to punt it out of our end zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most Titans play ever. Quadruple whammy.
Yeah, it's tough for Titans fans. I know a lot of Titans fans, and they've been shaking their heads all season. But a little thing to mention about something that happened after this game, CBS showed a little live look-in at the Ravens locker room after the win, and John Harbaugh was talking to the team and made a little statement. He kind of took a jab at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they lost to last week after Ben Roethlisberger had another incredible performance. But for a rough summary of what he said, he mainly said that, they lost to a team last week, but that team got their butts handed to them this week. The Steelers did lose to the Jets. Yes, to the Jets. But in the perspective of a Steeler fan, the Steelers only lost by 7. So it's not really that much of an upset, I guess you could say. It's still really surprising. It was an 8-game losing streak that's been snapped, but still, I don't really know if Harbaugh had the right to say that. I know there's been a lot of backlash between CBS and the Ravens organization for this, how that was not supposed to be on TV, but just kind of interesting that it happened.
The one thing that Tennessee always does is kick the bleep out of Vanderbilt.
True.
You gotta watch for the cameras in the locker room, and you gotta be really careful about what you say, because nowadays anything can be recorded and put
Absolutely.
anywhere, and anybody can find it. So you really have to start watching what you say.
Definitely. And talking about the Jets beating the Steelers, it was 20-13. Jets winning. Jets just really took control this week, which was a little crazy. It was hard to watch as a Steelers fan, I'm not going to lie. Michael Vick, 10 for 18, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns passing. Really good for him. But looking at Ben Roethlisberger's numbers, 30 for 43, 343 passing yards, and 1 touchdown. He got sacked twice. He threw 2 interceptions. I mean, for the past couple of weeks, like we saw Ben throw 12 touchdowns total in the past 2 weeks. Walking around campus, a lot of people who know that I'm a Steelers fan, they're like, oh, I bet you're really happy with Ben. But the thing with the Steelers and with any Pittsburgh team, you can't get lost in the hype because they'll build you up and break you right back down. So I think that's kind of what happened this week. But the Jets defense forced 4 turnovers. And looking at receiving, Martavius Bryant, I mean, everybody expected Antonio Brown to come out and have another stellar performance, but Antonio he was really struggling this week. But Martavius Bryant had 4 receptions for 143 yards and 1 touchdown. That 1 touchdown came with 1 minute and 16 seconds left in the game. It was an 80-yard pass from Roethlisberger. It's something you're so used to seeing with Ben, throwing big yardage like that. But one thing to note about the game that I thought was, at first it was fantastic, but then it was really crazy. Sean Swisham, the kicker for the Steelers, hit a 53-yarder, which I want to say was his longest in career history, and then he turns around and misses a 23-yarder. Him and I had the exact same look on our faces after he missed that, of just complete disbelief. You don't really expect Sean Swisham to miss kicks like that. I believe last season, I should say, he kicked for 93%, I believe it was, on attempts and completions. So very interesting game. Kudos to the Jets for snapping that losing streak. I know Rex Ryan talked about it after the game, saying that the team deserved this. And, I mean, they did. Michael Vick, great game for him. Another game to look at is Green Bay demolishing Chicago, 55-14. Aaron Rodgers, this might be his game of the season. Aaron Rodgers, 18 for 27, 315 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions.
It was 42-0 at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
42-0. And you think for a team that in the past, back when they had Urlacher and the Bears defense, you wouldn't be giving up 42 unanswered points in the first half. But this is a whole new ball game without Lovie Smith.
It really is, and a lot of times I think a lot of people forget how much of a game changer he was, especially, in a coaching standpoint. I mean, he was a fantastic coach. He still is. Now he's a defensive coordinator, I believe, down in Tampa Bay. He's doing some fairly decent things there, but the Bears definitely are struggling without him, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Jay Cutler showed his Vanderbilt football training.
That is very true. That is very true. And looking at some other games from this weekend, the Cleveland Browns beat the Bengals 24-3, which means the Browns now have a share of the AFC North. They are sharing it with the Bengals. Very tough to say, with me being a Steelers fan, but kudos to the Browns for the season that they're having. They are 6-3 overall. The Bengals are 5-3-1. They had a tie a few weeks back. But AFC North still so up in the air. It's just back and forth every week. And that's always a really dominant league in the NFL. A dominant division, I should say. So it should be really exciting to see what happens there. Chiefs pulled out a really close game against the Bills. 17-13 there, a win for Kansas City. Speaking of close games, the Lions beat the Dolphins 20-16. That puts the Lions up to 7-2 on the season. Cowboys, they're 7-3 right now. Not sure how this is still happening. There's some kind of magic there. 31-17. Tony Romo threw for 3 touchdowns, and I know you're pretty happy about that, Rico.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. One thing I was kind of concerned with is the question: would the Cowboys get back to what got them to a 6-game winning streak? Mm-hmm. Of course, we got 2 losses against Arizona and 1 against the Redskins. Albeit these 2 great teams, but Redskins not. But it's a divisional game. You kind of expect that. But, of course, we got back to the running attack. DeMarco Murray had 100 yards. Dez Bryant, what a game for him. I mean, the first half, he had 58 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't know about the celebration touchdown. He now doing an X plus the Rockaware thing. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I think the Cowboys, this is a great game for them going into a bye week. And this next half of the season is going to be a tough test for the Cowboys. I'm not sure what to expect. But I'm definitely excited for what I just seen from my Cowboys, albeit against Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. But it was a great experience in London.
Definitely. And looking at some other games, the 49ers came out with a really close win in overtime against the Saints, 24-27 there. Kaepernick, 14 for 32, 210 yards, 1 touchdown. Pretty good yardage. Only 1 touchdown from him is kind of surprising. Other games to look at, Falcons beat the Buccaneers 27-17. Seahawks beat the Giants in non-surprising fashion, 38-17 there. Seahawks are now 6-3 on the season. Marshawn Lynch had 4 touchdowns. Really not surprising, but really great for him. 21 rushes for 140 yards. Cardinals came back and rallied to beat the Rams 31-14. Palmer got hurt, and their backup quarterback that came in, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Drew Stanton, Drew Stanton, I believe that's who it was, came in, just took complete dominance, and he threw 3 touchdowns there. Or I might be wrong on that one. He threw a touchdown, but he really led a really good drive at the end for Arizona to come back and just really take control for that win. Looking at some other games for Monday Night Football tonight, we have the Panthers and Eagles. Eagles 6-2 on the season. Panthers 3-5-1. I think a lot of people have been expecting the Panthers to be a little bit stronger this season, but it could be an easy win for the Eagles. They're 4-0 at home right now, so that should be really interesting tonight. And then before we finish up the show, basketball season is upon us here on Rocky Top, and it's a beautiful thing. Exhibition games have been going on. We'll look at the men first. They played Pikeville last week, and they won. No surprise there. They ended up being Pikeville 80 to 62. Top scorer for that game was Armani Moore with 17 points. And then the Vols played Lenore Rhine also this past week. They won 77 to 49. Derek Reese, 14 points. Josh Richardson also had 14 points. Those are two seniors that are definitely going to be the stars for this team. They're going to be leading the Vols really hard this season. Next game for the men will be on the 14th against VCU in Annapolis, Maryland. Should be really interesting. It's for the Veterans Classic at the Naval Academy. Really should be a really interesting game. VCU is always fun to watch no matter who they play, but hopefully the Vols can really pull out this win. That'll be at 6:30 on Friday on, I want to say, CBS Sports Network, so look out for that. And then the women, they started their season yesterday. It was still an exhibition game against Carson Newman. They ended up winning. I want to say they blew past them. It was like 90 to 57, I believe it was. So really big win there for the women. Not much of a surprise. But Nia Moore, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, 29 points. That's just ridiculous for an exhibition game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, man. The one thing I took away from the women's is their defense. They aggressive, physical. I mean, their defense is just, they play with a string. They fast. Like, they're very athletic. I think the women's is definitely, I love them. I like what I just saw. I love the coach because, of course, she played behind Pat Summit. She was assistant coach. So I trust her. And I like what I'm looking for. I like what I'm seeing with the women's basketball.
I think this is a big season for Holly Warlick because there are those people that are starting to make themselves vocal that, well, she's not won enough tournament games for us because she's not Pat Summit, and she's not going to be Pat Summit.
Right.
Because nobody can be Pat Summit except for Pat Summit.
Right.
So this is a big season for her. She can really take a step forward and shut down some of the naysayers this year. And it looks like she's off to a pretty good start with it.
Definitely. So it should be a really exciting season for basketball. It's always nice to have basketball back on Rocky Top. Quick mention, the Lady Vols soccer team did lose to Kentucky in the SEC semis. Really tough to watch, but it was a really, really good game, surprisingly. I really thought that the Lady Vols could pull out the win, but it always kind of hurts against Kentucky. But great season for Lady Vols soccer team. I know they made all of us Tennessee fans really proud, but that's it for this week. Really packed show. Next week we'll talk about the game against Kentucky, do a little analysis on that, and then we'll look ahead to Mizzou and the rest of the season to see what else the SEC holds for the Vols. So that's it for this week. We will see you next week.